Nặng thôi.
Nóng thật á.
Con Phong chưa đợi rồi ha.
Xong bắt nó không?
Hello, and welcome to this recording brought to you by the British Council. Physical Education by Richard Sidaway. School days are supposed to be the best days of your life, and part of that experience usually involves some strenuous physical activity. I asked some colleagues to give me their recollections of what happened to them on the sports field and beyond, and this is what they told me. Cup winners. When I was about 10, my friend Steve told me, the football team from our year inexplicably made it to the cup final of the local schools league. I say inexplicably because I only remember us losing nearly every match we played. Anyway, in the final, I set up the winning goal, a brilliant cross to my mate David, who headed the ball in just before the final whistle. I still have a photograph of the team holding the cup. Forest hike. Thomas said, I remember having to lead a group of 8 boys on a school expedition for the best part of 2 days when I was a teenager. Even though we got lost at one point, I managed to keep them all together and got them from one end of a large forest to the other and back by sheer force of will. I was chosen to be the leader, I think, because I was the only one who knew how to read a map. When we arrived back at the campsite, we found out that all the other groups had cheated and hitched most of the way instead. I felt a bit of a mug, but also rather proud of myself at the same time for having done it properly. Learning to swim, learning to drown. According to Lawrence, I learned to swim comparatively late, I suppose. I was maybe 9 years old, but my brother had a traumatic experience which nearly put him off for life. We lived in the USA for a while and had access to a university pool where the coaches had trained the American Olympic team. In those days, though, their idea of teaching kids how to swim was to tie a tin can to their ankles with a bit of string, throw them in the deep end and shout, "Swim!" I'm surprised my brother survived at all. He could only have been about 6 at the time. Sponsored walk. Joy said, one of my earliest physical feats was probably going on a 10-mile walk for charity when I was about 7. I went with my older brother and my dad, but they didn't make much allowance for the fact that my legs were shorter. I had to go at the same pace as them. Even so, I made it and raised quite a lot of money from school friends and teachers who had agreed to pay me for every mile I walked. Cross-country ordeal. I remember one dark, wet afternoon in February being herded out onto the school field and having to run 3 miles across country while the rain came bucketing down, my friend David told me. Soon we were all drenched to the skin, shivering with cold, and the only way to stay warm was to keep running. One of the gym teachers, who had been sitting inside having a cup of tea, came out to meet us halfway around the course and told us to jump over a stream before we could start on the home stretch. This teacher actually stood on the hands of the boys he didn't like as they were trying to climb up the muddy bank on the other side, so that they slid back down into the freezing water. I was disgusted by this, but of course I didn't say anything. I was only 12. I think it changed my view of human nature a bit after that. The fact that someone who I had previously respected could be so cynical and cruel. Dwarfed in Germany. William said, we went on a tour of Germany one year from secondary school to play football against 3 different teams there. Everyone was violently sick on the ferry going across to Holland, and the whole thing was a bit of a farce, as the teacher who had arranged it didn't speak German very well. So we ended up playing teams who were 3 or 4 years older than us. Naturally, we got beaten every time. Climb every mountain. According to Duncan, one of my best memories of early physical endeavour was climbing Ben Nevis, which is the tallest mountain in the British Isles. It was a glorious day, which is pretty rare for that part of Scotland, and we walked up in about 5 hours. The last bit is pretty hard going, as it's a zigzag path of big stones. We took the family dog, and she had a really difficult time of it. The strangest thing was that we didn't see too many people on the way up, and then, when we reached the top, it was suddenly covered with Japanese tourists. I can only presume they had been airlifted there by helicopter. Down to earth. Philip told me. My cousins were always the outdoor adventurous types, learning how to canoe and windsurf and abseil and so on. One day, one of them climbed onto the top of the house to fix some tiles with my uncle. The next minute, he appeared at the kitchen door, a little bit dazed, and his mother, who was cooking lunch, looked at him in surprise and said, "What are you doing here? I thought you were helping your dad." "I've just fallen off the roof, Mum," he said. Apparently, he had overbalanced and toppled over backwards. Because he had recently been doing parachute training, his latest hobby, he had rolled over automatically when he hit the ground, without thinking. This was a big, old two-story house, and he must have been at least 10 meters from the ground. But he didn't have a scratch on him. We hope you've enjoyed this recording.
We hear it a lot in the news these days. Recycle newspapers and save a tree. Collect bottles and cans so they can be reused in the manufacturing of new products. Protecting our delicate environment seems to be on the agenda of politicians, government leaders, and citizens in many parts of the world to show support for Mother Nature. The concept of green consumerism has gained momentum more and more over the last decade, and the public feels moved to pitch in and help. However, 3 essential keys need to power this movement include a more informed public, the development of improved technology, and a greater demand for recycled materials. The first step is to raise public awareness about the recycling process, to explain the kinds of materials that can be recycled, and provide ways on how to properly dispose of them. Local governments should educate the public on how to properly sort reusable materials from those like wax paper, carbon paper, plastic laminated materials such as fast food wrappers that can't be recycled very easily. Then a system of collecting these sorted materials needs to be established. The public interest might be there, but soon may wane if there isn't a system where they can take these materials to be recycled. Sometimes we become complacent when it comes to recycling, but when you speak in terms of actual facts and figures that everyone can understand, people become more cognizant of the problem. I remember reading one time that the energy saved from one recycled can provides enough power to operate a television for 3 hours. Give the public information they can grasp, and then you'll increase the chances of gaining followers. Second, technological progress has been made on many fronts, but governmental agencies need to step up their support for companies involved in recycling by providing tax incentives, low-cost loans, and even grants to upgrade equipment and to encourage further research. One breakthrough has been the development of a new manufacturing process that uses enzymes to help remove ink from paper in more energy efficient and environmentally safe methods. Recycling paper materials can be expensive in both monetary and environmental terms. The difficulty in removing print from paper, the amount of energy expended during the process, and caustic waste that is sometimes produced are costs that companies incur that are then passed on to the consumer. The final key is to increase demand for the growing surplus of resources waiting to be recycled. This process has appeared in various regions of the world where the technology to process the used materials lags far behind the amount being collected for recycling. There may be a great outpouring of support, yet the great stumbling block to implementing the second stage of this plan could be impeded by the corporate sector's inability to find commercial enterprises interested in using recycled goods especially when the cost exceeds those of virgin materials. Recycling is a crucial key to protect our planet. The three keys mentioned are important ways to achieve this end.
Không, ý là con như kiểu là con dính đây này. Con dính buộc cho chặt cho con dính buộc lòng của con hen à.
Buộc lông lòng là thôi, buộc chặt là hỏi tóc đó.
Cuối cùng xong.
Hello, and welcome to this recording brought to you by the British Council. Trains, Past, Present and Future, by John Russell.
Coi cô đem chiếc kèm không?
Why did railways develop? Railways are not a modern invention as most of us think. The idea of transporting things and people on rails has been around for a long time. Rails were made of wood, stone or metal, and railway wagons were pulled by horses. Some were even wind-powered and had sails. At the start of the Industrial Revolution in Britain, people needed to transport raw materials such as coal, so created a network of canals and rail links between towns. But canals and horsepower were a very slow way to move things around the country, so the speed of railway wagons needed to be increased. How did steam engines help? By 1800, many industries were using steam engines designed by James Watt, from where we get the electrical measurement, watt. Richard Trevithick, a Cornish engineer, refined Watt's invention, and after failing to build a steam-powered road vehicle, he designed the first locomotive for an ironworks in Wales. He called it a puffer because of the noise it made, and on its first journey, it travelled at almost 8 kilometres an hour. Unfortunately, it was so heavy that it broke the rails. It only made 3 journeys. But it had shown that steam engines could be used to move trains, and speeds began to increase. When was the first accident? By 1829, locomotives were travelling at speeds of over 45 kilometres an hour, and the first public railway had been opened, the Stockton and Darlington Railway. The most famous early locomotive was the Rocket. In 1833, it won a competition organised by the owners of the Manchester and Liverpool Railway to find the best locomotive for their new line. Unfortunately, during the competition, a member of Parliament wasn't careful as he crossed the tracks, and the Rocket knocked him down. He died later. This was one of the first train accidents in history. What was the golden age of steam? The next 130 years can be described as a golden age of steam. Railways were built all over the world, and the size, speed and comfort of trains continued to increase. By 1870, it was possible to cross America by train, and the building of railways in many other countries allowed people and progress to move quickly across the world. Hello, and welcome to this recording brought to you by the British Council.
Overpopulation by John Cootie. I come from the south of England, in the most densely populated corner of a small island, which you might think is full of people. The UK as a whole has 2.4 people per hectare. I have never gone hungry. The only time when I wish there were less people is on rush hour trains. However, one of the most interesting findings of the census of 2001 was that 1 million people were missing. Or at least, there were 1 million people less than the authorities expected. Should we be happy that we have more space and less mouths to feed? I don't know. As I start writing this article, the world population, according to the Office of Population Research at Princeton University, stands at 6,315,850,431. Doom, version 1. In 1798, Robert Malthus wrote an essay which got economics the name of the dismal science. It was called The Principle of Population. He said that it was impossible for the number of people to increase, and even worse, it was impossible for the standard of living to rise. The argument went like this. 1. Population naturally increases geometrically. 2, 4, 8, 16. 2. Food production increases arithmetically. 2, 4, 6, 8. 3. So population will be controlled by lack of food, the same as it is for animals. Some people will always be starving. A lot of people disliked Malthus's point of view, often because it seemed to go against the idea of progress, which was so important for other social theories of the time. Anyway, the experience of the next 2 centuries shows that something must be wrong with the theory. In the 19th century, world population rose from 1 to 1.7 billion. In the 20th, it increased to about 6 billion. Doom version 2. In 1961, J.G. Ballard wrote a story called Billennium. It's about a world where the population has gone on increasing at 3% a year to reach a figure of at least 20 billion, although the true number is kept secret. To make space for growing food, everyone lives in giant cities where the buildings are divided into little cubicles. A single person can have 4 square meters and a married couple 6. Everyone has enough to eat, but life is certainly very inconvenient. People spend most of the time waiting in queues for the bathroom or anywhere else they want to go.
Cosmetic or plastic surgery often evokes images of famous personalities wanting to alter their appearances through elective surgical procedures. However, reconstructive surgery is a procedure that makes a similar but different impact on the lives of many around the world. And many of these patients suffer from either congenital defects, like a cleft palate, or from injuries sustained in accidents or as a result of animal bites. Some disfigurements can also be due to the effects of disease or infection. Yet the individual with such defects often bears more than just outward physical marks. Loss of hope and self-worth, as well as acceptance, are commonplace. In the past, such procedures were only available in developed countries where the medical expertise and financial resources were available to afford such operations. However, a number of worldwide organizations made up of volunteers make regular visits to developing countries to provide reconstructive surgery to those who could not otherwise receive such care. In addition to the care they provide, these volunteer specialists also provide training to healthcare workers in these procedures so that local hospitals, nurses, and doctors can become self-sufficient. The end results of such efforts have transformed lives. The patient now can live with some normalcy and hope for the future with less fear of being ostracized by neighbors and family. And the healthcare worker who performs the procedure perhaps feels a greater understanding and compassion for those who suffer from such defects. There are many ways for people to assist in supporting these volunteer efforts. Although most people do not have the medical expertise to perform reconstructive surgery, they can still donate time, money, and supplies to such organizations. A quick search on the internet can get you started.
Lên xe chỉ mà con gái lên chỉ mà con trai.
Thôi còn Việt Thương luôn.
Ê Thương, chị là chở cú ra đó. Một bóng cái nhấn âm, một trắng cái nhấn duyệt âm, một bóng cái nhấn duyệt rồi.
Bấm cái nhấn này chứ.
Hay là cái chính bóng cái nhấn là nó. Cái chính nó, cái bắn cái nhấn, bắn cả nhấn. Bên chị giãn cái một cấp thì một bơi chụp giãn lại đó đẹp đỡ thổ phô nó tệ và lý thì rồng con cầm vào nhắm tin như kia cái có bóng không đâu á để em trúng phong với ai
Neo
Ở đầu cú em với mèo chứ.
Part 3. Questions 21 to 35. In this part, you will hear 3 talks, lectures or conversations. The talks, lectures or conversations will not be repeated. There are 5 questions for each talk, lecture or conversation. For each question, choose the right answer. A, B, C or D.
Mày mà Việt Nam mà một
Questions 21 to 25 refer to the following professor's lecture.
Mày thì năm mình
First, take some time to read the questions 21 to 25.
Có thể là chị ngồi bên đâu mà bên em ngồi bên cuối bên được à? Bốn rưỡi cho em đi vừa đúng.
Để mà nhóc à? Để mình phải dùng cái đấy.
Nhục à? Chị
Mà tao
Tao là chưa nữa. Đổ răng. Răng.
một tóc mình rửa.
Okay, class, I want to talk to you about the Cold War today. Now, the Cold War wasn't just one single war. It was actually a long time of aggression. It lasted about 50 years. Anyway, the Cold War was mainly between the US and the USSR. That was Russia's old name. They had different opinions on just about everything. Oh, and Joseph Stalin, who we have talked about before, was the leader of the USSR at the start of the Cold War. Anyway, there was a lot of suspicion during the Cold War, but the US and the USSR never actually fought each other. This is because both countries had nuclear weapons, so they were afraid of each other. They didn't want to destroy the whole world, and that might have happened if they'd fought each other. But instead of fighting, they showed their different opinions by competing with each other. For example, they made their militaries bigger, and they raced each other to see who could get a person in space first. Stuff like that. But a lot of the problems were political. The two countries were very different, and so they couldn't get along. This is what caused the Cold War.
Questions 26 to 30 refer to the following conversation. First, take some time to read the questions 26 to 30.
Tích mình được mà.
Mày đi sang đấy.
Lâu.
Mày đó.
Đứng lâu.
Mà làm gì em chị tuyển đi học được.
Thì đến khi nào là chị xong rồi.
Hả?
Mệt quá.
Okay, yesterday we read about Georges Seurat. Now, many people would like to paint like Seurat, but very few people can. He invented a very precise way of painting. It looks different and is hard to do because it is so exact. There were various styles of painting, but Seurat decided to make a different one. The first difference was that Seurat took a lot of time to prepare before he painted. He planned his paintings very carefully. He made many drawings to decide on the best way to reproduce the scene. He worked for many hours before he started to paint. With this style, you have to have a clear purpose. With other styles at this time, they had very little time to prepare. Now, the second difference was that he used pure colors. He understood that the eye would blend the colors. He knew that if he painted red next to yellow, the eye would see orange, okay?
Why didn't he just mix the paints like other artists? Wouldn't that have been easier?
Yes, but using pure colors made the painting very bright. These paintings don't look bright in books, but when you see them in person, wow, they are great. Now, as you know, the biggest difference was that Seurat didn't use brush strokes. He painted tiny dots, one at a time. Millions and millions of dots, and some of his paintings were very big. Can you imagine how long this took? One painting took 2 years. Of course, that didn't mean that Seurat was a better painter. All the well-known painters back then were very good and made beautiful paintings. But Seurat was very proud of his different way of painting. He felt that this new style represented people and nature very well.
Questions 31 to 35 refer to the following professor's lecture. First, take some time to read the questions 31 to 35.
Ngã tay gần.
Cô sách vở một đôi đã soạn thì mới đi học mình nên
Cho đến giờ đi học đi.
chuyển giờ đã soạn sách vở
Em
đó.
soạn từ cái.
Biết tính bên ông số nên mình nặng hay.
Cái tay cái đó nữa. Còn sao cái nữa thì này ra khá là nặng. Bị răng được cái 2% nữa. Được rồi, không quá đủ.
China has ended its decades-long one-child policy to allow all couples to have 2 children. The ruling Communist Party of China made the announcement on Thursday. The one-child policy, officially called the Family Planning Policy, was a population control measure that was introduced in 1979. Policymakers hoped to restrict the country's surging population and therefore control rates of poverty. It wasn't adhered to strictly, and many exceptions were allowed. In 2007, around 36% of China's population was subject to a strict one-child restriction. An additional 53% was allowed to have a second child if the first child was a girl. The new two-child policy will reverse China's very low fertility rate. The new two-child policy is expected to provide a huge economic boost for China and prevent it from developing into an aging society. China's labor force reached a peak of 940 million in 2012. However, this decreased to 930 million in 2014. and was expected to fall by another 29 million by 2020. Predictions from Peking University are that there will be an average of 2.5 million extra newborns per year. This will result in more workers and an additional $11.8 billion in annual consumption. Shares in many international baby goods companies jumped by over 10% after the news was announced. The new policy will affect around 100 million couples.
Em chị cứ đợi tao cho em rửa. Cứng nhờ. Em mua để trên phải 7 đây để trên đóng 7
Chị
được.
sáng đi. Mà em cô đi lên cô sáng nổi lên. Em cô sáng ban thử chỉ có bèo.
Mama đã mua hả mua kia?
Em đi tìm nghề rằng đấy.
Ý. Em không nghe.
Đi tính ngồi đâu quạt này chứ.
Bộ mày chị đông xuống mới tỉnh chị đông xuống đi. Nóng đi. Nóng đi.
Mò rồi đi anh.
Ui, ngoan thì mò vậy. Lúc nổ một tí đấy chia. Dưới đi nóng à? Mày điện thoại chứ dưới đi nóng. Ui, chỗ đi nóng bưng luôn. Đi có phát nổ rồi. Đấy là của chị cũng được phát nổ. Mình cho hai máy nổ cũng bèn. Chọc.
This is the listening test for levels from 3 to 5 of the Vietnam 6 level language proficiency test. There are 3 parts to the test. You will hear each part once. For each part of the test, there will be time for you to look through the questions and time for you to check your answers. Write your answers on the question paper. You will have 5 minutes at the end of the test to transfer your answers onto the answer sheet. The recording will now be start. Please ask any question now, because you must not speak during the test. Now open your question paper and look at part 1. There are 8 questions in this part. For each question there are 4 options and a short recording. For each question, choose the correct answer A, B, C or D. You now have 45 seconds to look through the questions and the options in each question. Now we are ready to start. Listen carefully.
Look at question 1. What is John going to do tonight?
Hello, Mrs. Brown. Is John there?
No, he's out on his bicycle at the moment.
Oh. Can he go swimming tonight?
Sorry, Paul. He's got a football match tonight. Two. Which bag does the woman buy?
I want to buy a present for Diana.
What about a bag?
Yes, this one's nice. It's small and round.
I think she'd prefer a square bag.
No, this is better. I'll get the round one.
3. How much did the woman pay for the apples?
Can I help you?
Yes, I'd like a pound of apples, please.
Do you want the ones at 30 pence, 35 pence, or 40 pence?
The ones at 30 pence, please.
4. When must the boys get on the coach?
The football match starts at 2:30, but we should get there at 1:30. The coach will pick us up at 10 to 1, as it'll take us about 40 minutes to drive there. So we'll meet in the school car park. Don't be late, boys, will you?
5. What fruit do they take?
Mum, have we got any fruit to take on the picnic? There were some oranges and bananas.
Here are the bananas. Let's take those.
Oh, the oranges have all gone. What about taking some grapes or apples as well?
Okay, let's take the grapes. That'll be enough.
6. Which present has the man bought?
Is the book in this bag for Mum, then? I didn't think she was particularly interested in flowers.
I thought she'd like it, to give her some good ideas for the garden. And even if she never reads it, it's got some lovely photos.
I thought you were going to get those gloves I showed you in that shop last Saturday. They match the scarf I've bought her.
7. Where are the photographs?
Have you seen my new passport photographs? I put them on the bookshelf. Oh, here they are, with your coffee cups. I hope they aren't dirty.
Oh, sorry. I was showing them to Pat. He says they make you look like that newsreader on the television.
8. What did Ben break?
Ben, what's this broken cup doing here?
Sorry, Mum. I had an accident when I was washing up. You know those big dinner plates?
You haven't broken them as well.
Oh, just a couple. They slipped out of my hands into the sink, and the cup got broken as well.
That is the end of part 1. Now turn to part 2. You will hear 3 different conversations. In each conversation there are 4 questions. For each question, choose the correct answer A, B, C or D. You will hear the conversations only once. Now open your question paper and look at the conversation 1. You now have 25 seconds to look through the questions and the options in each question. Now we are ready to start. Listen carefully.
Dave, I'm going to the supermarket to pick up food and drink for Saturday's picnic later. Any suggestions?
Well, everyone's been talking about having a barbecue down by the river, so why don't you pick up some hamburger and hot dogs?
Okay, but how much hamburger meat are we going to need? And hot dogs too?
I don't know. How about 3 pounds of hamburger and a couple packages of hot dogs?
Oh, that's not going to be enough. Do you remember the last picnic we went on? Your roommate Jim ate about 10 hamburgers by himself.
You're right. Let's see. I better write this down. Let's see. About 9 pounds of hamburger meat and 7 packages of hot dogs.
And you better pick up some chicken for those who don't like hamburger or hot dogs.
Okay. How about 5 or 6 bags of potato chips?
Better make that 8 or so.
All right. Oh, and we're going to need some hamburger and hot dog buns. How about 5 packages apiece? I think that sounds about right.
Yeah, you better pick up some mustard, ketchup, and mayonnaise, too.
Okay. What else? We're going to need some soft drinks. How about 10 of those big 2-liter bottles?
Sounds fine, but be sure to buy a variety of drinks.
Okay, and what about dessert?
Well, maybe we could ask Kathy to make a few cherry pies like she did last time.
Well, I wouldn't mind that, but you know she's been very busy working 2 jobs, so I'd hate to ask her. And, hey, why don't you whip up some of your oatmeal cookies?
Well...
Hey, you could even ask, what's her name? Yeah, the new girl, Susan, the one that moved across the street.
Well,
I bet she'd be willing to help you.
I don't know.
She's a real knockout.
Nah, I don't think I could ask her. I don't know her phone number. Plus...
Hey, you don't need to. She's at the door.
What do you mean?
Well, I thought you two would hit it off, so I called her up saying I was you, and I invited her over to watch a movie.
You did what?
Wait.
Now open your questions paper and look at conversation 2. You now have 25 seconds to look through the questions and the options in each question. Now we are ready to start. Listen carefully.
Can I go outside to play?
Well, did you get your Saturday's work done?
Aw, Dad, do I have to?
Well, you know the rules. No playing until the work is done.
So what is my work?
Well, first you have to clean the bathroom, including the toilet. And don't forget to scrub the bathtub.
No, I want to do the family room.
Well, okay, but you have to vacuum the family room and the hall. And be sure to dust everything. Oh, and don't forget to wipe the walls and clean the baseboards.
Okay.
And after that,
Oh, no.
next sweep and mop the kitchen floor. And be sure to polish the table in the living room.
Okay.
And make your bed and pick up all your toys and put them away. And...
More?
Yeah. And then, how about going out for lunch and getting a big milkshake? But, yeah, you probably don't want to do that.
No, I want to.
Okay, while you're doing your work, I'll be out in the yard raking leaves and pulling weeds.
Now open your questions paper and look at conversation 3. You now have 25 seconds to look through the questions and the options in each question. Now we are ready to start. Listen carefully.
Okay, everyone, I want to review the first 2 days of our travel itinerary for the trip. Okay, yeah, please take out the paper that I handed out earlier. Okay. First of all, we have been very fortunate to have been able to purchase discount tickets to cover most of the transportation costs and scheduling activities. And I want to also thank the group of parents who worked very hard in order to raise funding through different businesses in the community. I really appreciate that. Let's see. Okay, everyone should meet at the airport at 6 a.m. This will give you time to check in and get through security. Our plane departs at 9. Our plane arrives in New York at 3 p.m. and we will take a bus from the airport to the hotel. We've been able to get great rates on this hotel because we're staying on a weekday instead of the weekend. In the morning, for any of you who like to get exercise, we will be meeting in the lobby around 6 a.m. to go jogging around Central Park for about 45 minutes. And we'll get back to the hotel about the time when the restaurant opens, so you'll have enough time to grab a quick breakfast before we leave the hotel at 8. We'll be taking a ferry ride to Ellis Island and then to Liberty Island to visit the Statue of Liberty. I mean, this is something that you really can't miss. And later, we will go to Times Square, where you can have lunch on your own for about an hour from about 1 to 2. Later in the afternoon, you have the choice of visiting the Empire State Building or the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Either one of these are great. And we have some great group discounts. We will meet back at the hotel at 6 p.m. and we'll have dinner at a very nice Italian restaurant downtown. And then we'll catch an exciting Broadway musical around 8:30 p.m. Any questions?
That is the end of part 2. Now turn to part 3. You will hear 3 different talks or lectures. In each talk or lecture there are 5 questions. For each question, choose the correct answer A, B, C or D. You will hear the talks or lectures only once. Now open your questions paper and look at talk or lecture 1. You now have 35 seconds to look through the questions and the options in each question.
Vậy cái nóng. No.
Now we are ready to start. Listen carefully.
Frank, tell us about some of the ships you've discovered.
Well, there's nothing quite like finding your first old ship. It was 300 years old. It was just lying at the bottom of the sea, so it wasn't difficult to find. Most are covered in sand and rocks, but this one wasn't.
I'm actually a teacher, not a full-time diver. I dive in my free time, but I often get to them before the professional divers because I have good, up-to-date equipment. Another thing that helps is talking to fishermen who tell me about their local area. I've even written a book about some of their experiences. At the moment, I'm looking for the gold from a ship called the Seabird. It was an enormous, well-built ship, and it was coming from Australia on a winter night in 1859. Everything was going fine until the ship reached the English coast, when it crashed into some rocks in a very strong wind and sank to the bottom of the sea. It was carrying gold from Australia, and most of it is still at the bottom of the sea. My wedding ring is actually made from gold, which I found on an 18th century sailing ship. A friend of mine